Chapter 28. It was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but I turned on my heel and walked away from the only clue I possessed pertaining to my sister's current location. I maintained a disingenuous saunter until I rounded the corner. Then I broke into a slightly superhuman run. The note on the door. I saw the small, white square in my mind's eye, as vividly as if I was actually standing on the well-worn carpet in the apartment building's third-floor hallway. I'd read the kidnapper's missive, had hurried inside to hunt down forged identification documents, then had forgotten all about the scrap of paper when Simon's presence sent me scurrying down the fire escape to beat my retreat. Of course Kira's pesky social worker would have found the note. His broad shoulders had no chance of fitting through that window, which meant Simon would have left via the more traditional route. When he closed the door, the square of paper would have been staring him in the face, adding mentions of werewolves and artifacts to my earlier evasions about Kira's current whereabouts. No wonder he'd contacted the police department and set up an Amber Alert, then sent out a net of officials to scoop me up. It all made perfect sense. And, unfortunately, turned Kira's future even murkier than it had been before, because human authority figures sniffing around my trail meant that the one open channel of communication between myself and my sister's kidnappers had just slammed shut in my face. Inhaling deeply through my nostrils, I reminded myself that I wasn't entirely out of resources just yet. The city was dark, but far from sleeping, as I angled my way into the red light district, planning to hit up acquaintances who kept their ear trained to the street. Unfortunately, a string of prostitutes and black market thief spawns slammed their doors in my face, one after another. And at the end of the block, the fear widening Joe Sly's face as soon as I entered his establishment suggested my usual resources had a more unified reason to clam up. "Just let anyone who's interested know that I'm willing to negotiate," I told the bartender, rather than bothering with a question he was clearly unwilling to answer. "I won't be reachable through the usual channels, but they can call me on this cell." I rattled off the numbers of a newly bought burner phone, then waited impatiently as Joe failed to write even a single digit down. "I don't know who I'd give this to," the vertically challenged old-timer muttered, glowering up at me from beneath bushy brows. He was lying through his teeth, I noted, which confused the issue further. After all, as best I could tell, Joe was entirely human and didn't have a clue about Shifter's existence. If it wasn't sharp-toothed werewolves putting the fear of death into him, then what sort of terror would keep this leathery survivor from even passing along a measly note? Kira's round face rose in my mind, and this time I succumbed to the urge to beg. "Please," I said. "I'm hunting for my sister." Joe gave me the fisheye, but the mail did eventually write down my digits. Still, I had a sinking suspicion he was going to ditch the napkin as soon as I turned my back. The pulsing neon lights strobed behind me as I stepped outside, tucking my chin deeper into my coat. It was turning colder by the minute, so I wasn't entirely surprised to feel the soft chill of snow landing atop my cheekbones as I turned my face up toward the sky. "Now would be a good time for vague hints, Mama," I whispered starward, figuring the drunken teenagers behind my back were too engrossed in whooping it up to notice I was speaking to nobody but myself. Unfortunately, I really did seem to be talking to snowflakes only, because no answers were forthcoming, even from inside my own head. I wandered for hours after that, until the first glint of dawn overcame the glow of half-strength streetlights. A businessman had offered to pay me for sex, 2 frat boys had made an even less successful attempt at pushing me to the pavement, and I'd been roundly ignored by all permanent residents of my home turf. All told, I was exhausted, frustrated, and scared to death that Kira's kidnapper would harm my sister due to circumstances beyond my ability to control. Don't make this poor child suffer. the polished nature of the written words didn't lower their threat value one iota, and I shivered as I remembered the homeless guy hidden beneath the bridge, with the imprint of Mama's medallion frozen into his chest. That could be Kira, if I didn't find her quickly. But I'd twisted metaphorical arms all night, and now my contact information was almost certainly flowing down the grapevine between myself and whoever held my sister hostage, which meant I might as well take cover and ensure no nosy cops found me while I waited for the kidnapper to call. To that end, I ducked into a dank public bathroom, tucking clothes and personal belongings into a starball-created yoke around my stomach, before donning the body of my fox. Nosing out from under the stall door in red furred splendor, it was easy to hop up onto the sink, then slither out the broken window, placed just underneath the eaves. For half a second, I teetered there atop the chipped concrete, breathing in the freedom of becoming a fox. Snow was falling harder now, the white blanket covering up grime and making the city appear both clean and new. And I couldn't help thinking how much Kira would have loved the snowstorm, how her eyes would sparkle while her cheeks turned pleasure pink. Today, though, Kira would enjoy neither snowmen nor hot chocolate. Instead, she was caught in the grasp of a shadowy force, dark enough to make even Joe Sly run scared. No wonder focusing on my sister resulted in a sharp pain within my gut. But wait, was that ache merely remorseful wallowing? Or was something else going on? Because between one gust of snow-laden wind and the next, the burn had gained a direction that tugged my vulpine feet forward. Merely swiveling my body to face north lessened the agony momentarily, and when I hopped to the ground and took one tentative step in that direction, my stomach warmed and the pain lessened, only to bubble back to burning agony when I planted my furry feet rather than continuing along the indicated route. It was never a good idea to get caught up in unknown magic, but I'd been wandering aimlessly for hours and was glad to be pulled in any direction, even a bad one. So I didn't try to resist the tug further. Instead, I sprinted north out of the warrens, twisting and turning down curvy alleys, guided by the compass within my stomach. I stopped only once to bite ice balls out from between my paw pads. The snow was growing deeper now, and the day had warmed just enough for the heat of my skin to melt fluff into ice. But my muscles tensed, and I barely managed to pause long enough to catch my breath before the tug in my gut yanked me forward. And somehow I wasn't surprised when Mama's voice sprang to life, with yet another warning I couldn't puzzle out. "Hang out a sheep head to sell dog meat," my mother's voice noted. And as I panted, pressed against the side of a building, I realized I knew exactly where I was for the first time in over an hour. The nearby houses had turned huge several moments earlier, but my tired brain hadn't made the obvious connection until I recognized the cavalcade of parked cars, half covered by blankets of white. In my defense, snow stifled sense and blowing particles obstructed vision, so it was hard to tell I was walking directly into danger until werewolves rose out of the white haze before me, while the overwhelming scent of Atwood finally filtered into my nose. So that's what Mama meant. Walking up to the ruling werewolf's den in the body of a fox was a recipe for disaster, and I could only hope it wasn't already too late to hide whatever secrets I had left. So I pushed upwards into humanity, then shivered as bare feet froze upon contact with an ankle-deep layer of snow and ice.